Okay, so if you've ever had to prep for a big meeting or maybe a public presentation, you know the drill.
Oh, yeah.
You get that list of questions in advance, thoughtful questions usually, about your background, your ideas,
Yeah.
your whole deal.
Right?
And your brain just immediately kicks into gear, right?
Yeah.
Crafting those perfect little self-contained answers, one by one, ready to go.
That's the gold standard. Absolutely. That is what's expected of you.
But today, we're going to dive into a critique of that entire process. It's
Yeah.
based on the material you shared with us, and it challenges that whole model.
It really does. We're looking at a method of preparation that just fundamentally refuses to produce those clean, separate answers.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're focusing on the work of Jaime Hoerricks, a PhD, and what it really means to prepare when your goal isn't just extraction.
Exactly. The goal is what she calls organizing coherence over time.
Which just
Yeah.
it completely flips our default productivity script on its head.
It does. The mission, as she puts it in her writing, is to prepare to speak in a way where the work is presented whole. And it's a very explicit refusing the flattening of meaning.
And this whole philosophy is really rooted in this one key concept of being a Gestalt processor.
That's the term. Yeah. It's absolutely central to this whole thing.
So for anyone listening who might not be familiar with that specific cognitive framework, can you sort of ground that for us? What does that mean?
Of course. So in the simplest terms, Gestalt just means the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Okay.
So for a Gestalt processor, complex information isn't taken in as a list of facts. It's received and held as an entire structure, like a coherent picture.
So if you try to pull one piece out,
You destroy it.
Yeah.
If you try to force that processor to break the whole thing down into bullet points or, isolate one single argument from its real-world context, you actually lose the meaning itself.
because the meaning is in the connection.
Exactly. The coherence is found in the relationships, not in the isolated facts.
So we're talking about a system that sees knowledge as this intricate tapestry. And if you pull one thread, you risk unraveling the whole thing.
That's a great way to put it. And it helps you understand why her process is described as slow, bodily, and recursive. It's not this linear extractive thing that, most systems demand.
Right. And to really get that, we have to understand the speaker herself. This whole perspective comes from a really specific intersection of identities that you were curious about.
Yes, the sources really highlight this. Hoerricks identifies as autistic. She's a Gestalt processor, a special education teacher,
And a writer.
and a writer whose work sits very specifically between lived experience and systems analysis.
That combination is just, it's so potent. It gives her this personal and professional lens to critique the very system she works in.
It does. She's not just some academic in an ivory tower. She's on the front lines, working every day with students whose, as she says, their ways of making meaning are routinely misunderstood.
Misunderstood by these standardized models we have.
Exactly. So this takes the whole discussion out of the realm of pure theory and makes it a practical daily reality for her. She is constantly seeing systems that reward conformity
And quick answers.
and quick standardized outputs over, a deep, maybe nonlinear, but genuine understanding.
And you can feel how that professional world informs her personal work. She talks about spending a lot of time writing her way back into what she calls coherence.
She's documenting what happens when our bodies have to adapt to threat or when memory holds things that language can't quite articulate yet.
And crucially, what happens when these big systems, academic, professional reward, just complying over really understanding.
And what's so fascinating here is that the pressure she sees her students facing,
Yeah.
that pressure to comply, to give the easy, extractable answer,
It's the exact same pressure she's getting when she's asked to prepare for a talk.
it's a mirror image. And that creates this deep ethical resonance in her refusal. Her personal refusal to have her own work flattened is the same as her professional goal to make sure her students are understood on their own terms.
So her prep becomes this ethical stance.
It is. It's a stance against the very compliance she's critiquing every single day.
Okay, so let's talk about that refusal in action. She gets the list of questions, right? The
Yeah.
thoughtful ones about biography, ethics, all of it. What's the immediate reaction?
Well, the sources say the questions themselves are often really good. They're complex, they're well-meaning.
Right.
But she says they're overwhelming. And not because they're unreasonable, but because they ask for something her cognitive system just.
Yeah.
It does not produce on demand.
And that is Discrete, extractable answers.
Exactly.
I mean, that's a wild thing to say out loud in professional circles, where the unwritten rule is you always have that immediate authoritative answer ready to go.
It is. The request is for linear output, but her internal structure is recursive. It's a total mismatch.
So she just says it.
She makes it completely explicit. I don't prepare by answering questions.
Wow.
Because if you see knowledge as a gestalt, you can't just separate the theory from the biography. Her theory is her experience. To pull out a bullet point on ethics would mean tearing it away from the memory that created it.
And that would feel like a betrayal of the knowledge itself.
Yes, that's exactly how she frames it.
So if the point isn't to just check off elective answers for someone, what is the alternative? Why speak publicly at all?
Her motivation is that the writing itself, the whole coherent piece, is the method, care, and refusal of flattening. It's offered whole, not extracted. The goal is to let the audience engage with the entire tapestry, not just get a few loose threads.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because it forces all of us to think about the cost of speed, the cost of extraction.
Right.
If we're always demanding that complex knowledge gets boiled down to 3 bullet points for a slide deck, what are we losing?
We're losing the connections.
Wow.
We are losing the nuance that actually makes the knowledge true or useful. Think about it in any professional setting. The performance review, the summary report.
The 5-point plan?
All of it. These are all systems that reward you for taking something huge and messy and making it neat for the spreadsheet.
And she's basically saying, I will not break the internal complexity of my work just to make your system run smoother.
Yes. It's a powerful challenge to this whole productivity culture we're in.
So if she doesn't prepare by extracting answers, what does this slow, bodily, and recursive method actually look like? Walk us through it.
She puts it in these beautifully simple terms. She says, what I do instead is live with them.
Live with the question.
Yes. When she gets those prompts, she doesn't open a laptop and start typing. She takes them into the archive and she just lets them sit there.
Okay, we have to talk about that term, the archive. What is that, practically speaking? Is it a journal? What are we talking about?
It seems to be a conceptual space, but one that's really anchored in her body and her memory. Okay, the archive is where all her existing knowledge, her lived experiences, those bodily memories that hold trauma or insight, it all lives there.
Yeah.
And the new questions, they're like triggers introduced into that ecosystem, not assignments.
She doesn't force a response.
She waits for the internal system to react, and she notes this process can take weeks.
Weeks. In today's world, asking for weeks to prep it's revolutionary.
Yeah.
But the point isn't to add new information.
Yeah.
It's a reorganization of what's already there.
Precisely. The external questions are just a catalyst. They start to reorganize what I already hold. It's like shaking a kaleidoscope until a new pattern just emerges on its own.
So she's not retrieving data points. She's letting the whole ecosystem of her mind shift until connections surface organically.
Exactly. It seems to be a kind of background ambient process. The prompts enter her body's awareness, and she waits for connections to rise up. The body holds the history, and the questions trigger memories that maybe weren't even articulated before.
In this slow, intentional process, it must have a huge impact on what the final talk or piece of writing actually looks like.
Oh, absolutely. The outcomes are that memory surfaces on its own, connections form without being forced, and this is the crucial finding she shares. Theory finds its place after lived coherence, not before it.
Okay, say that again. That feels really important.
Theory finds its place after lived coherence, not before it.
That completely flips the typical academic model.
Completely.
Usually you start with a big framework, right? You start with the established theory, and then you try to jam your own experience into those boxes to make it fit.
Yes. She's saying the opposite. Her personal experience, her internal organization, that has to dictate the structure first. The coherence has to be found internally in the body and memory before the language of theory can even be applied to describe it.
So the goal is to articulate the coherence she already has, not to build an argument to satisfy someone else.
You've got it. It's about translating that internal whole structure without shattering it into pieces.
So what does this all mean for you listening, maybe grappling with your own prep for a presentation or just trying to make sense of a ton of information? We've just done a deep dive into this one very personal method.
I think the key takeaway is that preparation doesn't have to be this race to the finish line. It doesn't have to be about having the immediate answer.
Well,
It can be an act of allowing your own internal structures to reorganize until the work feels whole. It's an ethical choice, really, to refuse that flattening of meaning that happens when we prioritize speed over real integration.
and the connection to you, the learner, is this. When you're consuming complex information, a dense report, a new subject, and it's given to you in those neat separated chunks, 3 takeaways, 5 bullet points, how much meaning are you inadvertently flattening just to get a quick, compliant understanding for yourself?
It's a great question for how we engage with new ideas. We are rewarded constantly for the speed of extraction, for having that immediate answer. But what might happen if you let a really complex idea just sit in the archive for a week?
Instead of rushing.
Instead of rushing to that immediate extractable answer for your report or your meeting, true deep understanding. It often requires a slowness that our systems just don't value.
I think the ultimate provocative thought here is that this method of preparation, for a speaker like Jaime Hoerricks, it's not just about writing a better speech.
No, it's much deeper.
It's an act of deep self-care. It's an ethical refusal of all these systemic pressures that value fast compliance over the hard, slow work of finding genuine, whole coherence.
Yeah.
So maybe the next time you're facing that daunting list of questions, you could ask yourself, what happens if I just wait? Wait for the truth to surface instead of trying to force the answer out.